one of the most expensive films ever marketed is Avengers Endgame. That cost, according to Disney and MCU and Marvel, $200 million just to market. And that's what they're revealing to us. Because obviously every movie has off-the-book costs, fees, reshoots, things that, we have no idea about. So just saying that it's $200 million is just a simple way of saying that it costs a fucking lot to market. Is every film going to cost $200 million to market? Absolutely not. Roughly a safe estimate usually is maybe around half the budget, 30 to 50% of the budget of the film probably went into that much money for marketing. So if it's $100 million, you can bet that about $20 to $50 million was spent on marketing. I mean, just TV ads for a typical MCU movie probably costs about $50 to $20 million. Just TV ads, not counting billboards, commercials. Hello, movie friends. Welcome back to Raiders of the Lost Podcast, the ultimate film and TV podcast. In this episode, we're talking about money. In terms of money, we're discussing box office. In the film box office and how it's changed over the years, the health of it right now, post-pandemic, with all the streaming platforms blowing up and making 77 shows per year and releasing all their movies online, digital, same-day release, or just only going to streaming services, how it's affected the box office. Is the audience growing? Are people going back to the theaters? But overall, analyzing what the box office is, common misconceptions about the box office that we see constantly and get asked about quite often, as well as how movies become profitable, what kinds of box offices they need to have to become successful or break even, how much movie theaters play into the box office revenue, how much they get a cut of ticket sales versus studios. So much to break down because this is a complex topic, and a lot of people, they see just a massive box office for a big blockbuster movie on a huge budget, like they'll see $300 million on a $200 million budget. They'll think, oh, that movie was super successful. Not true. Yeah. You got to factor in so many things. And we're going to break that down basically because the blockbuster is Hollywood right now.
And I'll just say, there's also, I've been seeing this like competition kind of mentality forming in film, in the film world community online. And it's like this competition of the amount of money a movie makes determines how good it is, and comparing like, oh, this movie's better than this random movie because it made so much money and that made no money. It's kind of worrying in terms of how people are viewing success and how the number of tickets sold really is kind of becoming more important to a lot of people than how good the film is, how great the story is, and how compelling the narrative is. And that's something that's I've been noticing recently more and more often on social media, where it's kind of like your favorite sports team getting like the most home runs of the like your favorite athlete hitting the most home runs in the MLB. It's like, it's cool, but it's like, does that mean they're the best player in the MLB? Not necessarily. And it's kind of this competitive mentality and pitting movies against each other that I don't like. And the thing is, there's a place for studio tentpole films. Studios are companies, the corporations, they need to make money to keep alive. They have a lot of employees. Every one of them, the major ones, they have thousands and thousands of employees. And they're also publicly traded companies. They have shareholders. They want to keep happy. They want to keep as many people investing in the company and the stock market as possible. So obviously, they want to generate as much profit as they can. And so there is a place for making big tentpole movies geared towards just making a large amount of money. But let's not forget that there's so much great cinema also getting made that isn't really getting seen.
At the end of the day, movies are made to make money. That's why they're made. Obviously, we love movies, and people who make movies love to make movies, and studios love to make films as well. Love to win awards and tell incredible stories, but at the end of the day, it's a dollars and cents business at the end of the day.
It is business.
And I think there's also been this odd shift for studios where if their movie doesn't make a ton of money, like a blockbuster studio, like I won't name names.
A blockbuster studio.
Like not blockbuster, but like a studio that makes only blockbusters.
A major studio.
You know who we're talking about.
Yeah.
If the audience doesn't turn up and make that company and that business $700 million box office at least per movie,
And then there's this odd shift where they blame the audience and they blame people for not going to see the movie. So there's this weird relationship with the box office and with a lot of studios right now.
How dare you not come?
Where like they expect us to go just because of their brand, and they like almost feel entitled that we have to go see their movies, and like, oh, if you didn't see this movie, there's something wrong with you. It's kind of weird, you know what I mean?
Well, I've also noticed that film community there's not obviously not everyone, but a lot of people seem to be acting like they treat film studios like they're like a sports team, and they root for that sports team even when the sports team doesn't do well, even when they lose a bunch of games or get shut out. Like, it's like, oh, it's still the best. It's still the best team. And there's it doesn't really make sense. Like, if the studio makes a bad movie, they make a bad movie. Call a spade a spade. We don't have, but there is going back to the competitiveness where people are jumping onto a studio like it's like it is a religion, like it is a sports team, like a fanatic, not of the movie, but a fanatic of the studio, which I've never seen before. It was always in the past. It was like, it didn't really matter what studio made a movie. Is the movie good or is it bad? But now the studio is like becoming the face and the brand of the movies they're making.
Versus like the franchise, versus Lord of the Rings, now it's DC Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
Versus like Spider-Man, now it's like Marvel MCU.
Exactly.
And Disney. And
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. That actually reminds me of this great TikTok video I saw the other day where it's green flags in dating for like if you're dating, like, find a guy, a great green flag. And
What do you look for guys?
Well, an underrated green flag, according to the video, which I think is true, is like a guy who has a sports team that they've been following their whole life, but they're terrible, and they still ride out the loyalty, and every year they're still rooting for them, watching all the games. But that's like a green flag to like date that kind of guy. So New York Jets fans, you have a chance.
So you're saying
Just
there's
kidding.
a chance?
Just kidding,
Well,
Jets
Tom's
fans.
not playing anymore.
Just
so
kidding, Jets fans.
Tom's not in the AFC East
It doesn't
anymore.
really matter.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
JK, these are jokes. These are jokes. But fumble.
But also, I mean, the thing with studio tentpole films, they obviously dominate, and it's not just Marvel, Star Wars. I mean, people always say Disney, Marvel, but it is all Disney now. So it's more so, you're gonna look at it as it's obviously Disney, Warner Brothers, Paramount, Universal. They're obviously the big guys.
DC. I mean Warner Bros.
Like,
No, you didn't.
I said Warner Brothers.
Did you?
Yeah.
Did he?
Roll the tape back.
Warner Brothers Discovery. Get it right.
Well, Warner Brothers is still the film division.
Yeah.
Warner Brothers Discovery is the overall umbrella. It's not just superhero movies. It's not just comic book movies and Star Wars. It's just mainly the approach of making gigantic studio films, heavy CGI, generally in the science fiction genre. Because Transformers is still in the same thing. Harry Potter is still in that same regard. So it's not just comic books, and it's not just superhero movies, and it's not just Star Wars. But it's more of this approach to making as big of movies as possible. And the thing is, over the last several decades, starting in the 80s, when we started getting franchises, we're making a boatload of money. You get the Indiana Jones franchise. You get the Star Wars franchise. You get Back to the Future. These really laid the groundwork for studio filmmaking, where they're going. Before the 80s, there were a couple franchises, Rocky, but
Star Wars started in the 70s.
Yeah, very late 70s, but still, it wasn't a franchise then in the 70s. You know what I mean? Rocky was a franchise. It wasn't like that successful. It did very well, but it wasn't like gigantic numbers. There were like B-level franchises, but in the 80s, franchises really started to take shape, and before then, studios were just trying to make as many really solid movies as they can to make good amounts of box office. And box offices were never really monumental. There were a couple outliers every year or so. There was one or two big movies, like Jaws, the year it came out, blew everything out of the water, no pun intended. Things like that. The Exorcist was a massive success, but there were generally 1 to 2 to 3 films that were like huge, colossal successes, if there were that many in a given year. But now we're living in this age, especially the last 15 years or even the last decade, where we're getting at least a dozen movies that are making enormous amounts of money, selling lots of tickets. And what's happening, it's not just, and those are just the top 10 or 12. There's still at least 30 to 40 large tentpole movies like this getting made every year. Sometimes not successful, sometimes they are super successful. But studios changed their approach to film production, where they were like, they started making huge boatloads of money just from one film. And so they started gearing their risk assessment towards, we're not going to fund and produce 30 movies mid-level that could do okay, but most likely will do like mid numbers. Then there's a chance one of them will break out. And then they changed their approach to we're going to make a dozen gigantic movies a year that we feel confident will perform extremely well. And we're gonna instead of spreading all of our money amongst like 20 to 30 mid-level movies, we're spreading our money between 10 large-scale movies. And that's basically what's happened to the studio system. They started being like, the risk assessment was just, it's not worth it for them to fund 30 movies that cost $20-30 million. Let's fund 10 movies that cost $100 million. You have the potential to make $1 billion. And the maximum those mid-level movies will make is maybe 100, maybe 200 if it's great word of mouth and if the movie is really special. But you have a guaranteed hit most likely when you invest $100 million, $200 million, and make a huge, bombastic, gigantic, extravagant film. And so that's kind of what happened in the studio system over the last few decades.
Over this century specifically. The last time there was a year where the number one movie of the year at the box office wasn't a franchise movie was in 2000 with Castaway. Was the number one movie of the year. It made $31 million at the box office. That was number one.
Was that opening weekend?
No, that's the total.
31 million?
Let's see.
Are you sure about
that? Oh, no,
that?
the average of movies that year. I'm
Castaway made 400 million.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay. That was in the box office, but it was the number one movie that year. Was not a franchise.
I believe, just off the top of my head, I think Castaway made $450 million.
I'm sorry, I was looking at the average of movies.
Oh, the release, yeah,
of
gotcha.
movie releases. So the average movie release made $31 million at the box office.
That's good.
Versus it's down to the teens in terms of how much money the average movie makes per year. Obviously, more movies get released every year. We're around somewhere between 700 to 1,000 movies get released every year. It's pretty big. I mean, still in the 1930s and 40s, there were years over 500, 600 movie releases a year, sometimes less.
It wasn't. There's like this myth that like there were like 12 movies that came out a year. That's not all the case.
It's still about a movie a day.
Because that would mean there's like 50 people working in the film industry. There are a lot.
But since 2001, every number one movie of every year has been from a franchise. And it started really with 2001 and Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. And franchises really started to take shape and take control of the box office around here, because in 2000 we had a total box office of $13 billion globally. Now, in 2019, right before the pandemic, we had the best year ever at the box office globally with $42 billion. And this number pretty much went up every year from 2000 all the way up into 2019. Then obviously it dropped off the cliff to $11 billion in 2020 because of COVID and lockdowns. And then 2021 was $21 billion. 2022 we just went up again to $26 billion for a global box office. Now, obviously, we have the insurgence of, or the mass production of superhero comic book movies that definitely inflated a lot of these numbers, because we did have healthy franchises coming. I mean, Shrek 2 was the best movie of 2004. Lord of the Rings in 2002, 2003, The Two Towers and Return of the King. Those were the two best movies, most highest grossing of their respective years. Pirates of the Caribbean in 2006 and 2007. Those were the biggest movies of their respective years. The Dark Knight in 2008. This is where franchise blockbuster films were starting to just decimate the box office.
Yeah.
These huge opening weekends. Then the MCU started to definitely take over. First Avatar took over in 2009. Then we have Toy Story 3 had a great year. But MCU and then Disney just took over every single year. The top highest grossing movie of the year was an MCU project and now a Disney project, and we were having crazy growth at the box office. But again, this was inflated. Will we ever get to a year of $42 billion at the global box office? Because you got to remember, 2018, 2019, that's Infinity War, Endgame. Plus, they were still putting out 2 to 3 MCU projects
There was a Star Wars
a year.
movie, too.
Star
Yeah.
Wars. We had DC was making movies still at that time.
Big year.
DCU movies were coming out. So we were definitely inflated. I don't know if we'll ever top $40 billion annually again, because even if you look at this year, we had an incredible year at the box office. Lots of movies came out, but you take away Avatar 2 and you take away Top Gun Maverick, that's a total of over almost $4 billion. You take that away, and 2022 brings it down to about $22 billion global box office.
So I'll say we will obviously have years that make over $40 billion because of inflation and the U.S. dollars just number rising in inflation, where movie tickets, everything gets costlier as decades go on. So because of that reason, we will. But I'm thinking,
in like 20 years. Yeah.
So
probably sooner.
Yeah. But in terms of number of tickets sold, I think we peaked probably sometime in the 2010s with number of tickets sold that we'll never get again. And that's because really the impact that the pandemic had, the lockdown had, and the benefit it had towards streaming services, where streaming services doubled down. A lot of people I think might have gotten used to watching films primarily from home on streaming apps. And so even though movie theaters and theatrical releases are recovering and getting better, I think the numbers this year are going to be a great indication that things are getting back to normal. It's going to be a fantastic year.
I can see $30 billion easy.
Absolutely. But still, it's not going to be the same because so much got put into the streaming industry that there's just way too much content, whether it be films or TV shows, to watch at home. And it's just impossible for theaters to compete and for theatrical releases to even come close to competing like they used to. So I think that the lockdown, even though theaters and theatrical releases and exhibitors survived for the most part, it will never be the same.
It didn't kill the box office like a lot of people thought it was going to do. People thought movie theaters were going to die. We were worried about it as well. Thanks to Top Gun Maverick for really saving the in-theater experience, because I have this great statistic right here from among subgroups, and it has age demographics in 2007 and how many times they went to a movie theater in person versus 2021, the year after the pandemic. Now, age groups 18 to 29, they saw 9.1 movies a year in 2007. Age 30 to 49 saw 4.5 movies a year in 2007. Age 50 to 64 saw 3.1 movies in 2007 per year. And then 65 and older saw 2 movies a year in 2007. Now, in 2021, age group 18 to 29 sees 3.2 movies per year. That's down about 65%.
Wow.
Age group 30 to 49 sees 1.4 movies per year. That's even bigger drop. Age 50 to 64, they see 0.8 movies per year. And then 65 and older, they see 0.5 movies per year. So the interest in going to the movie theater has dropped significantly in the last 14 years. Obviously, we have to take into account that this was taken in 2001. This was the year after the pandemic. Lockdowns were still giving people the
2021?
2021.
Okay.
The heebie-jeebies about going out into public. And I think there'll forever be a percentage of the population in the world that will still never go to public spaces again. That's totally fine. That's their prerogative. They have their reasons why. It's the way they feel safest is not being out in public in large groups and in closed spaces. To each their own.
Yeah.
And I have another really interesting study right here that asks pollers why they don't regularly go to see movies in theaters. And this was done in 2022. Now, for the reason of I am more interested in watching movies at home, 55% said that's a major reason. 25% said it's a minor reason. And then 18% said not a reason at all. Another question, it's because it's too expensive to see movies in theaters. 50% said that's a major reason. 32% said it's a minor reason. 19% said not a reason at all. When asked about, I'm concerned about the COVID-19 pandemic, 36% said that's a major reason. So that's a lot of people saying a major reason they don't want to go to the movie theaters.
This is 2022?
2022 is because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Again, we have to factor in these are people who take polls.
Yeah.
25% said it's a minor reason, then 40% said it's not a reason at all. And then I'm not interested in the films currently in theaters. 32% said that's a major reason, that every year they're not interested in seeing the movies that are coming out. 34% said that's a minor reason, and 34% said that's not a reason at all.
I also think that the real rise of both YouTube in terms as a form of television and then TikTok really have taken away a lot of people's have taken up a lot of people's screen time in terms of, you know, maybe you're less interested in watching movies because, you know, you watch things on YouTube or and definitely younger. I've read lots of studies where especially young people, whether they be preteens or younger or even young teens now, they prefer watching YouTube more than anything else. And so I think that very young kids, when they're getting older and when they have their own jobs and what are they going to be spending money on, I think they're less likely to be spending money on going to the movies, going to actual theaters, because they're growing up watching the majority of their media on YouTube or on TikTok or, well, actually, just mostly those two.
I think yes and no.
Yeah.
Of course, kids spend a lot of time on YouTube, specifically young boys. That's like 80% of the male population is about 80% of the viewers on YouTube in general for the app. It's like drastically a male heavy site for in terms of viewers.
Wow.
Now, I think there's something to that, but also the boys showed out for the Minions. We can't deny that they made that because of word of mouth, because of it being a trend. If you make a movie that people want to see and you capture something in the culture, people still go see it.
But the thing is, like, that was a one shot and it was a fad.
But all these kids, they still went and saw every MCU movie that came out, every Star Wars movie that came out.
Oh yeah, that's true. But but they're going to a film not because of the film more so, but that was an example of more so because it was a funny trend to do.
Yeah,
they
brought bananas and wore suits.
Yeah, exactly.
The boys.
It's for the clout. It was to make videos. You know what I mean? That's what it was for.
It's a work of art. I don't know what you're talking about. It is a brilliant film, Anthony.
But I think that obviously the biggest conflict and endeavor that movie studios have to undertake is they have to get people interested in going to the movies. They have to get people to be like, oh, I want to see that. I want to go to the theater. And so I think that over the last couple of years, the studio tentpole releases have just been downgraded in terms of quality of storytelling. And that also, I think, is worrying for the future of theatrical releases and exhibitors not making enough money to really stay comfortable and stay afloat. So the studios really have to do a better job of trying to make films that would get people excited who aren't already film lovers. Like you and I and pretty much everyone who listens to the show, we just love going to the movies, and we're going to see as many movies as we can. That's just who we are. But the average person, not everyone is a film lover. Not everyone is obsessed with movies. Most people are casual moviegoers. They'll go... What was it, before the pandemic, 2019, people our age was, 9 times a year?
Well, that was in 2007.
Okay, 2007.
But the average person, they usually go to the movies about 3 to 5 times a year.
That's very casual. That's not even every month. Like, I couldn't imagine going to the movies only once every 2 months. Like, that's
insane.
I've already, like...
What do you do?
Yeah.
Like, what do you do instead?
Yeah, exactly. it's I couldn't... But the average person is not, obsessed with movies like we and many people who listen to the show are. So... Studios, the challenge is to get people excited to go to the cinema and purchase a ticket. And that's really where I think they're kind of dropping the ball right now. Now, going back to Top Gun Maverick, we talked about how a couple weeks ago Steven Spielberg was recorded telling Tom Cruise, you might have saved theatrical release. You might have saved... Basically, he said you probably saved exhibitors and allowed film theaters to survive the pandemic and lockdown, and most notably the post-pandemic in terms of 2022. Now, the reason for that is because in 2022, I mean, Doctor Strange made, $900 million. A couple other movies did very well. Thor: Love and Thunder, $600-700 million. Those aren't rookie numbers. Those are good numbers. Top Gun Maverick wasn't even the highest grossing of the year. Avatar 2 made more money than it. Well, no, but Avatar 2 actually made most of its money in 2023, actually. I'm sorry, because it was a December.
Well, it still broke $1 billion in 2022.
So in 2022, Top Gun was it made the most money, but it's not like it made astronomical numbers compared to those other big movies.
Domestically, though, is number one.
But here's the thing. The reason why Top Gun, in a very real way, and why Spielberg, if he's saying that it must be true, is because Top Gun Maverick played for so long. Now, we got a lot of questions, and people ask us all the time, how are box office receipts split between studios and theaters? It's not exactly 50-50. Now, it's absolutely not set at all. It depends on the movie release. It depends on the studio. It depends on, is this an independent artsy film? Is this a big studio picture? So
plus the chain, AMC will get a different cut than ArcLight would have got, than like indie theaters will get.
Than a private theater, just an independent theater. So it's always different, but we can generally say that there is a chain of differences between the grossing ratio from week to week upon a film's initial release. So generally speaking, for a big film when it's released, the studio distributor will get about 90% of box office, and theaters will get about 10% of the box office.
And this is with the big blockbuster ones?
Big blockbuster ones. Then in the second weekend, it'll go down about 80 to 20 for the split. And then for the third weekend, it'll go 70-30, and then eventually 60-40. And then by weeks 5, 6, 7, 8, it basically reverses. And so eventually the theaters will start getting the majority of the profits. Now, this works for both systems because the studio, they get most of the money in the first few weeks. So they are really dependent on the front loading of a film. Doctor Strange making $250 million opening weekend. Like, they want those opening weekend numbers. That's really important to them. And then for theaters, they want films to play for as long as possible because by week 7, by week 8, it's 70-30 theater to studio. And so the reason why Top Gun was so important to the theatrical release industry was because it played for months. And I can only imagine by month 2 what the profit margin was for theaters. They were probably pulling in 90, maybe even 95 to 5% of profits for box office. So the longer that Top Gun played, the more money theaters made of profit margin, as opposed to Doctor Strange or Thor: Love and Thunder, which made the absolute bulk of their money in the first 3 weeks of release, where the theaters were barely getting much of the profits. So because Top Gun played for, I think Top Gun played for almost 4 months in theaters.
It was a while, man.
And
it had a re-release too.
Yeah, they were absolutely milking that and then Paramount was not getting much profit by month 2, by month 3, by month 4. So theaters being able to completely take the bulk of the profit for the latter months of Top Gun's release, I do believe really helped save that side of the industry because they were probably close to the brink of falling under. One of our favorite chains, ArcLight, it was very popular in LA. They closed down. They did not survive, and they had a bunch of theaters around the LA area. They had like a dozen just in the LA area.
They're great, man.
So that showed how vulnerable the theatrical side of the industry was, and so that's what Spielberg meant, and that's what we mean by Top Gun Maverick really helping keep theaters afloat. And we're not talking just AMC. We're talking about all of the private exhibitors, like just these tiny art house theaters that only have 2 screens or 1 screen. They're probably family owned. They've been around for decades. They aren't a big chain. Those really were absolutely at risk of falling under. Many of them did, but Maverick really helped sustain them for those slow months of 2022.
And it had such a huge domestic toll, bringing in a ton of money to domestic theaters versus something like Avatar having a way bigger box office globally, but making most of its money overseas, so it's not helping the theaters that are domestically here. But obviously you want money to be made everywhere. And the movie theater cut of sales in 2021, they made $5.5 billion on ticket sales for the box office, which was $21 billion of total for the entire year.
So they made about a quarter?
Yeah, so they made about a quarter of box office in 2021. And then in 2022, their box office total for United States and Canada went up to $7.3 billion for ticket sales. So that's going up, which is a good sign, but you can tell that that number got bumped up for sure because of movies like Top Gun Maverick and Avatar 2 making a ton of money for the box office. With long runs. Domestic takes, as well as Spider-Man No Way Home in 2021 was a huge hit for domestic box office as well.
And that's why theaters ask so much money for concessions, because movie theaters, chains, and exhibitors don't profit that much from a film's release. Obviously, I just mentioned how the studio gets the vast majority of profits in its initial first weeks of release. And so theaters are very dependent on concessions, and that's why popcorn's $8-9 now. That's why a bottle of water is $5-6.
Get that cup of water.
Because if a movie doesn't perform well and doesn't last in theaters for very long, movie theaters are basically screwed, because then the studio is getting basically the only amount of box office a film makes on a bad run, and then by week 3, when the movie nobody wants to see it, and the theaters start getting more profit percentage, there's no profit to be had. So theaters are extremely dependent on concession stands. That's why they cost so much.
Like Ant-Man and the Wasp 3, I know we're always banging on this one because it's the most recent one, and
it's a good example.
Tragic, huge drop at the box office.
I wouldn't call it tragic.
Well, for movie theaters, it's tragic.
Yeah.
So movie theaters, they're not making a lot of money off Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania because of the huge drops. It had a 70% drop week 1 to week 2, then a 63% drop from week 2 to week 3. So Disney got their opening weekend. Obviously, they didn't make their money back. They're probably going to lose $100 million on that movie, maybe more, maybe less, but ballpark.
Yeah.
But movie theaters, they're not making much profit or much income from Ant-Man and the Wasp. They'll make some, but it's not as much as they expect from a Disney or MCU film.
And that's why, still to this day, independent, quotation marks, artsy films are still very important to theaters because they have a better profit margin for those releases.
I mean, Everything Everywhere All at Once probably made more money than Ant-Man will for theaters, possibly.
I would say so because independently produced films, the distributors of those, they don't make the same kinds of deals for theaters. And so theaters, they'll end up being in the majority of the profit margin opening weekend for an independent release. And this actually ties to, I want to explain, because I still see to this day, like, there's this misconception of what an indie movie is. And I feel like there's this label, indie movie, and people just think it's cheap and artsy. And that's what an indie movie is. It's not all. It's just, independent film means that it's a film that's produced independently from a major studio.
But that's becoming more rare.
Yeah, very much more rare in America. It's still, the majority of movies in Europe are independently produced. Like, that's still to this day, like, very small movies are still making the most. Triangle of Sadness made $25 million in Europe, which is big numbers for Europe. There's less screens in Europe than there are in America. So it's a big deal. They still are making those smaller scale movies more often than we are. But independent films are just made. They're made by producers, people who either are experienced as producers or, people with some money who want to help add to another film. Like maybe they heard about something or someone pitched a movie to them. They're like, oh, here's a few $1 million. And so independent filmmakers will self-finance or ask for help financing a project, and they'll make a film. And it's a film that does not have distribution. Independent films, they can have the best talent. They can even have a good amount of money. Independent films can get made for $30 million, $40 million. It doesn't matter. Doesn't mean indie doesn't mean it's a $2 million movie.
Everything Everywhere All at Once is
$30 million
film,
production.
A24.
Yeah, the Russo brothers produced that. And so what happens is independent films, they're made, but they don't have distribution. Distributors are the major studios: Warner Brothers, Universal, Paramount, Disney, Sony. Those are the 5 major studios, and they act as their own distributors. So they do 2 things: they'll produce films, and they'll buy films. And so when they produce films, they're just going to distribute their own films. Sometimes they'll sell the international rights to another company. Like sometimes Universal will produce a film and then they'll sell their international distribution rights to like Warner Brothers. And then so Warner Brothers will get the profits of international distribution. That happens sometimes. Depends on the producers involved. Depends on the filmmaker involved. Like most notably, I'd say Tenet had split studios. It was a Warner Brothers production, but Universal distributed internationally. That's an example of that happening sometimes. But generally, the studio will distribute their own films. And distribute means marketing, putting actors and filmmakers on press tours, doing interviews, magazines, photo shoots, paying for parties, events, VIP things, press events, marketing in terms of paper marketing, billboards all over the country, posters at every movie theater, commercials, trailers edited for movie theaters, trailers edited for TV, advertisements and billboards you see at sports arenas. This is all the marketing team of the distribution company. So the studio marketing is part of this distribution arm of it. So when a film is made independently, they don't have any of that. All they have is a movie. And there's 2 options that independent films can do. They can either try to make a deal with the studio. Obviously, the producers most of the time know other producers, know people involved in the studio. So they'll be like, hey, here's this film. Do you want to buy it? Or sometimes the studio will already be signed on as a distributor before the film's made. They'll be like, okay, we agreed to distribute this film. We'll buy it right now. And then the other route is, if you can't just sell it to a studio, you go to film festivals. So the main reason film festivals exist is because they are showcases for independent films to find distribution. So Sundance, Tribeca, Toronto, what have you, They select films to play at their festival, and then who goes there is a combination of filmmakers and producers and the heads of distribution studios. So
And fans.
And fans, too. Yeah, fans get to go in, too, if you can get a ticket early enough. And so, but distributors and producers, they will go watch all these films, and they are going with the intention of buying at least one or two films when they go to Sundance. And then if they see a film they like, so like say like, I don't know, like Fox or Paramount, they have people go to Sundance and oh man, this movie's great.
Coda got spent.
Apple bought Coda for $20 million. Exactly.
32.
Oh, wow. Broke record. And so Apple, that's an example. Apple bought Coda. Apple did not make Coda. It did not produce it. Apple bought the rights to Coda and distributed it on their streaming service. But that's a streaming app. Like generally, if we're talking about like Warner Brothers, they'll buy a movie and then they'll handle distribution of theatrical exhibitors and marketing and stuff. And so what happens is the producers and filmmakers of that movie, like Coda, they got $32 million, and they probably got, if it would have been a theatrical release, they would have gotten a little back end of the theatrical box office receipts. But with Coda, they just got an outright $32 million. So they made return on their investment in the studio. Apple, in this case, got a movie. And so that's how independent films find distribution. They're made, but then they need to get sold to a studio to be able to be distributed.
And marketing is a cost that a lot of people forget to consider when they're talking about how successful a film is. Now, one of the most expensive films ever marketed is Avengers Endgame. That cost, according to Disney and MCU and Marvel, $200 million just to market. And that's what they're revealing to us, because obviously every movie has off-the-book costs, fees, reshoots, things that, we have no idea about. So just saying that it's $200 million is just a simple way of saying that it costs a fucking lot to market. Is every film going to cost $200 million to market? Absolutely not. Roughly a safe estimate usually is maybe around half the budget, 30 to 50% of the budget of the film probably went into that much money for marketing. So if it's $100 million, you can bet that about $20 to $50 million was spent on marketing. I mean, just TV ads for a typical MCU movie probably costs about $50 to $20 million. Just TV ads, not counting billboards, commercials, everything that they're advertising with other companies, whether it's with like Chevrolet or Pepsi. All this stuff costs money. So when you see a movie, $200 million budget, $350 million at the box office, and you read all these articles, all these headlines, smash hit, super successful, look at how much money this movie made, it's a success, made its budget back and more. No, you got to factor in again the movie theater cut, which obviously for a big blockbuster like we've been talking about, the studio gets most of the profit for the first few weeks, but then it starts to go into the theater's end. But also how much money was spent on marketing. So they're not making all the box office for the studio, because you got to factor in all these costs that people never consider. So a lot of these movies, like the typical MCU, DC, Star Wars movie, they have to make roughly $600 million to become successful. 500 to 600 to
at
break
the low end.
To break even.
Yeah, at the low end.
That's how much money these movies cost to make, especially something like even Ant-Man and the Wasp, $200 million budget, probably $250. Marketing, probably another $100. It's probably a $350 million movie. I mean, look at The Flash coming out. That's got to be over $400 million. For what's been going on with The Flash, if they don't make $1 billion, that's probably going to be a loss. Same thing with Indiana Jones 5. Indy 5, that's probably going to be upwards of $400 million at the end of the day, because of how long they've been in production, how many reshoots, all the rumors of reshoots they've been having, the marketing campaign. It was already about $250 million budget.
An estimate just came out that it's cost $360 million right now.
For production.
Yeah.
And marketing, that's got to make $1 billion. And I doubt that makes $1 billion, because is Gen Z going to turn out for Indiana Jones like we will?
I don't think so.
highly doubt that.
No.
So a lot of these studios, they're investing crazy amounts of money with these movies that it seems like they don't have great plans for, especially like something with Indiana Jones and The Flash. Obviously, things have been changing in the studios, and they've had all these controversies and issues that they necessarily could control or couldn't control. But still, when you're investing that much money into a film, and you kind of demand the audience turn out to collectively spend $1 billion, that kind of gets on my nerves a little bit because they kind of blame the audience for their film not being successful. And it's kind of like, we don't have to, it's not just because you're spending a ton of money doesn't mean we're obligated to go see your film. Of course, we're going to go see your film, but to blame the audience for your movies not being wildly successful or not making $800 million a year, $1 billion every time they come out, it's kind of absurd and ridiculous that we're at that state with the box office with major studios.
It's silly. And then another reason why studio tentpole films have really overtaken the studio system and have basically overrun the theaters is people don't buy DVDs anymore. People don't buy Blu-rays anymore.
They're expensive too.
Yeah.
$35 for Stuber? Like, who's going to get that Blu-ray?
Oh my God! What of all movies you picked that?
First thing that came in my head.
So I mean, I think everybody's seen that Matt Damon clip where he on Hot Ones.
Oh, the back, like
Yeah.
DVD rentals.
Yeah. So he basically was explaining how the DVD market was
And VHS, obviously.
yeah was instrumental, but really DVDs because they were more expensive than VHSs. I would say they were cheaper to make for sure. DVDs and Blu-rays were essential to the film industry because studios weren't dependent on the box office to really profit. A movie could break even or could even kind of fail a little bit, but then they know they can make $100 million on DVD sales. And the difference between DVD sales is that the studio gets all of the profit, especially when they're purchased online. Best Buy or what have you, wherever you buy them, they'll get a small cut, but not even close to the cut that theaters get of box office receipts. So the studio is profiting so much more on the distribution of DVDs and Blu-rays. And so a great example, there are a bunch of great examples of movies that became very profitable. Fight Club probably is the most famous example of a film that failed at the box office, but for years it just decimated DVD sales and just kept selling. I think the most selling DVD of all time is Finding Nemo.
Oh, yeah.
When it's generated hundreds of millions of profit just on its DVD releases. And so DVDs can really save films and make them not just break even, but make them extremely profitable for the studio. So they weren't reliant on only making front-loaded box office hits, not only gearing themselves towards, we need to make as much money in the first 2 weekends as possible. The best way to do that is to make huge, extravagant science fiction, generally huge, bombastic movies to get as much money in the first 2 weeks of release as possible, because nowadays, very few people buy DVDs. Very few people actually rent on iTunes, on Amazon. It's pretty rare. And I rent sometimes. I try to. That $3 is no problem for me.
Yeah, Anthony, he shops at Trader Joe's, everybody.
Because I mean, the quality's still just top notch when you rent it on Amazon Prime. I mean, they have the UHD most of the time. It's 4K sometimes. So you definitely are getting a big bang for your buck if you're going to rent a movie for $3 as opposed to streaming it illegally, which I've never done before.
Never.
But studios, they can't depend on DVD sales anymore. They can't depend on the distribution of a film for decades. Like they used to, they'd be like, okay, this movie's just straight making profit. It was just an investment. Fight Club, the DVD sales are huge every year after year. People just keep buying Fight Club DVDs and Blu-rays. And then we just keep doing these re-releases of like a 4K UHD. Oh, yeah, they just keep buying the new edition. They can make so much money off of Fight Club. But now they don't have that. All they can do is really sell the licensing to another streaming app. They can either put it on, so Warner Brothers can either
Well, I mean, they've supplemented the loss of DVDs with their streaming subscriptions, but you're still not making as much money as you would from individually renting out every one of these movies versus giving access to your entire catalog for $7.99.
I would say that they aren't even coming close to DVD numbers because the streaming, because they abandoned streaming in a way. When they went heavy in 2020, 2021, they realized we're not making that much money on streaming. So I don't think it's even close to a good alternative to DVD sales. They're trying, but all that Warner Brothers can do is when their movie exits theaters, they can either put it on HBO Max or they can license it to Netflix for 2 years for like $50 million. That's basically how studios can keep profiting off a film after its theatrical release.
And I mean, Disney just lost 2.4 million subscribers in the fourth quarter of 2022. So from October to December 2022, they lost 2.4 million subscribers.
Wow.
So streamers are starting to take a hit. Netflix, they've been losing a lot of market share. They've lost about 30% of their market share in interest in terms of how many people are tuning in and streaming and subscribing to their content in their streaming platform compared to everyone else, because everyone else is growing, Netflix is shrinking. And I want to go back to the opening weekend, and I hope we've been kind of revealing to you why studios are so hell-bent on having the biggest opening weekends of all time, because that's where they make the most of their profit. And it seems like movie studios, major ones, they're more focused on when they make a big blockbuster film and they're putting $100 to $200 million into a movie or more. All they're focused on is that opening weekend, and they put all their energy, all their resources into getting as many butts in the seats the first 5-6 days that movie comes out, rather than making a film that's not only great, but will remain in theaters for a long time and keep making money, because they don't want the movie theaters to get more profit off their tickets. They want to keep as much money technically away from the movie theaters as possible.
It's competition, yeah.
And also, it kind of just takes away the quality of the filmmaking, because it doesn't really matter anymore for a lot of them, for the stories. It's like, it doesn't have to stay in theaters for 5 weeks and be number one at the box office. If they get the first 2 weekends and have number one at the box office those 2 weekends, that's what they're going for, and that's really what they're depending on. And it really kind of, disappoints me. Avatar obviously is this kind of one exception where it was number one at the box office for 7 or 8 weeks or something like that. It was crazy.
Months,
but the average Disney MCU movie right now, but the average MCU movie right now is not staying number one at the box office. Ant-Man just got knocked out after 2 weekends at the box office.
Third weekend, it's not in the number one spot.
Yeah, it lost to Creed 3. They destroyed it.
I expect Creed 3 to have very good legs in word of mouth.
And so I don't love the opening weekend obsession, but that's really what they're so dependent on. And also, there's a lot of misleading statistics and I feel like log lines that studios will give about movies, and I think one of them is the opening weekend is always misleading, because when you think of weekend, you think of Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah.
That's the weekend for a normal human being
Yeah.
in the world. But an opening weekend now starts on fucking Wednesday. We used to have the midnight Thursday previews, which was awesome,
And that was new.
That was awesome. Like Dark
2010s.
Knight, started the whole thing of at midnight. You couldn't go at 4 p.m. on Thursday. Midnight, you had to be there for just that one screening. So technically it was Friday, but it was still Thursday night, midnight screening. But now every movie, they open up. Technically, some cities in LA, you can go see a movie on Wednesday night when it's coming out on
Wednesday
Friday.
during the day.
You can go at 4 p.m.
Thursday,
Thursday,
you can go at afternoon.
Thursday,
Yeah.
you can go at 11 a.m. But that still is being counted as a weekend statistic, which is absurd. So it's really,
every studio does it now.
it's
They all do
really
it.
misleading, because you see every year they still have these $150 million opening weekend, but now they're counting box office from Wednesday to Sunday now. Not to mention, they'll sneak it on a weekend, a holiday weekend, and they'll also get Mondays in
That's
there
a
as
6-day
well.
weekend.
6-day weekend, Wednesday to Monday, $150 million opening weekend, best ever. I'm sorry, Ant-Man 3, we're still going to nag on you, but President's Day weekend, they said it was the biggest opening weekend for the Ant-Man trilogy franchise. Yeah, because it was 5 fucking days of box office.
Come on, guys.
How do
Come
you not
on.
be number one for the trilogy? Like, of course. So the opening weekend is such a misleading marketing slogan and campaign with a lot of box offices.
But it's extremely smart marketing because,
absolutely.
because it shows that they're basically kind of misleading the public by saying, hey, this is really good. A lot of people are seeing this. You should see it too. It's kind of this messed up form of marketing where they're making people think that it's extremely popular when it's really not. And
Well, it's still very popular.
Oh yeah.
but
But anytime they can say new record, oh my God, that's such a great marketing ploy, just subconsciously for people to just be like, oh, interesting. It's so because we can't help but be attracted to success in some form. And so the more successful a movie is, the more attention it gets from people. And so they want to inflate those numbers as much as they can. And using those extra days is a really powerful tool for them to get people to go to the theaters.
it's just not impressive anymore. Like when The Dark Knight would make $8 million on the midnight screening on Thursday night, that was impressive as hell.
So The Dark Knight made $153 million on its opening weekend, and that was really Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Because it's midnight, Friday morning.
So it really did it in those 3 days. Avengers, the same thing. Avengers, I think, was still just Thursday midnight Maybe they might have pushed it a little earlier.
There
but
might
it's-
have been like 8 p.m.
But even the first Avengers was not as inflated as it is now. It wasn't even close to what it is now. So I think those movies, you can still show how impressive those releases were. But I think nowadays, when you're counting Wednesday to Sunday, it's not a clear statistic of a film success
And it's also changed so much where
for an opening weekend.
for when a big blockbuster's coming out, especially like a Disney movie, especially an MCU movie, when you go to the theater, there are no other screens playing anything but that movie. You'll go and there's like a showtime every 15, 30 minutes to see Avengers Endgame. And it's almost unfair and kind of helping inflate these crazy, wild opening weekends. Of course, people are going and people want to see the movies ASAP, which obviously we're there opening weekend every time. But it still is also another misleading factor where they're shutting down half their theaters to other films and just playing this one movie every 30 minutes in multiple screens throughout each theater.
Did you know what happened with the Hateful Eight?
Know what happened?
Disney strong-armed all the movie theaters to basically only release their Star Wars film that year instead of Tarantino's Hateful Eight on their screens.
So a lot of the theaters didn't play Hateful Eight?
Yeah, because Disney threatened we're not going to let you distribute our next film if you don't put this instead of Hateful Eight.
Man, we saw Hateful Eight projected on
Yeah.
70 millimeter film at ArcLight. Wow, that's one of my all-time favorite theater experiences.
It was great.
Man, it's wild, but there's a lot of misleading things that happening with box office reporting and everything like that. Even especially when it's like #1 movie in the world. It's like, what the fuck else is out right now? What's it going up against? Of course, it'd be shocking if it was #1 in the world.
I don't expect Coke and Bear to be #1 in the world, so I'm not surprised.
It almost did. It almost did.
Not in
man.
the world, no. There were some big Indian releases the past month.
It's true.
But also, the days of a movie's opening weekend are also pretty different. The Friday will always be the bulk of its weekend. Friday release will probably get about 35%. Saturday will probably get about 30%. Sunday will get 20 to 25%. And now Thursdays are getting 10 to even 15% of their opening weekend.
Thursday previews can be big.
But Friday, Saturday, obviously still the hot spot for generating as much money as you can. Friday, obviously, still is #1 for a film's release because more people want to see the movie ASAP, and it's more popular to be like, the first chance I get to see this movie, I want to go see it. So that's why Friday is often so popular because it factored that in with it being a weekend, whereas Thursday, it's not a weekend. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, then Thursday are basically in order of its most valuable day per movie's opening weekend release.
I'd love to talk a little bit about ticket sales versus box office because inflation has made a huge effect on the box office pretty much every 10 years or so since going back to the 1920s. And I think it's really impressive when you see a movie sell like 100 million tickets or more. And I have a list of the highest selling films in terms of ticket sales. But currently, the average ticket price in 2023 for a movie theater ticket is on average $9.17. What's that, about like 10 euro? So when a movie makes $100 million box office, that's roughly selling about 11 million tickets total, which is a ton.
It's a lot. It's a lot of people.
Now, the most tickets ever sold for a film is Titanic. It sold 382 million tickets. Then we have Avengers Endgame, 351 million tickets. Star Wars in 1977, 338 million tickets. Avatar in 2009, 328 million tickets. Gone with the Wind in 1939, 285 million tickets. But now movies like Titanic, Gone with the Wind, and even Avatar, and Star Wars for sure, they get a lot of re-releases.
I will say Gone with the Wind in this case had many re-releases to get those tickets.
Yeah, they did re-releases like almost every year in the 1940s.
It came out every year in the 40s. So Gone with the Wind is kind of an outlier in this.
But also it's really impressive still because the population back in 1939 and the 1940s was under 3 billion total in the world, not to mention the percentage of people who could afford going to the movie theaters wasn't as high as it is for people today growing up in countries where they have movie theaters. So it's still a really impressive feat. And then we have Sound of Music in 1965, 283 million tickets sold. E.T. the Extraterrestrial, 276 million tickets sold. Infinity War, 265 million tickets sold. Then we have 10 Commandments, Dr. Zhivago, Jaws at 242 million. Star Wars The Force Awakens, Spider-Man No Way Home, $235 million. The Lion King, The Exorcist, and then Jurassic World in 2015.
How many tickets did Top Gun sell?
I'm not sure. Because, again, inflation in average ticket price cost, and I'm sure a lot of people saw that movie in IMAX. IMAX tickets are a bit more expensive, so I think because of the special screenings that people saw that film in, that probably jacked that box office compared to the average ticket price. It probably went up to like 11 per ticket for Top Gun Maverick, my assumption. Same thing with like Avatar: The Way of Water, and why that's not on this list either. Now, China is also a massive film market, and they have a ton of films on this list. However, it's not as easily verified, so I left a lot of those movie releases out because some of them just say, like, 300 million tickets sold, 400 million tickets sold. Like, who can really verify that?
Just a solid number of 300 million.
And those are only Chinese releases, only in China, versus these all on this list are worldwide releases. So
Gotcha.
I have no idea if those numbers are accurate. So I left a lot of those Chinese films out because even though several of them are on this all-time ticket selling list, not really verifiable for these statistics, I left them out. I just did worldwide releases for this list right here.
Gotcha.
Now, before we continue more with the box office discussion we're having, let's head to our intermission, and then we'll come back. But before we continue, the best way to support Raiders of the Lost podcast is to become a patron at patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost podcast. We have 5 different tiers of support: $2, $5, $10, $25, and $100 tier per patrons. Every tier has awesome perks. You also all get access to a weekly bonus episode every patron gets to tune into. But at that $10 tier is the minimum for access to our Discord. It's an incredible community. We'd love for you to be a part of it. And then $25, you get a custom episode. 100 tier, you get to come on the show after 3 months like our friend Benjamin Cook, who you'll hear from in a little bit. Also, if you want to start your own podcast and want to learn how we did it, we have a masterclass online. The link is podcastmasterclass.teachable.com. You get all the info behind the scenes of how we make our show on a daily basis, all the lessons we've learned, the mistakes we've made, so that you can get the right foot forward when you're starting your podcast.
This episode is sponsored by our great friends at movieposters.com. Use our special promo code at the website, Raiders10, to get 10% off your order today. They have a gigantic selection of pretty much every movie and TV
show imaginable. I got you.
TV show imaginable. I just blinked.
What are those things on the TV?
We have a bunch of these posters on our set, at our home, in our bedrooms. They're beautiful posters, super affordable, and it's even better with our promo code Raiders10. They also do poster giveaways that we just did today. We announced a winner online today, so congratulations to our poster winner.
We do 2 every month.
Yeah, 2 every month from movieposters.com. We're going to do another poster giveaway next week, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, be sure to head on over to movieposters.com and use our promo code Raiders10 today.
And let's get into our intermission, and we're introducing a chosen one patron all the way from Australia, Benjamin Cook, who's been a patron in the Chosen One tier for over 3 months, meaning he gets to come on the show for a fun guest segment. We're bringing him in for the intermission, then we'll talk some more about the box office. Benjamin, how you doing, pal?
Good, guys. How are you? Good to be on the show. Thanks for
We're
having me.
fantastic. We can't thank you enough for the support you've shown us. And how long have you been listening to us? It's been over a couple of years, right?
I think I found you guys in maybe July, August 2020.
Wow. That's like right around when we started.
OG.
Holy
OG.
crap. We made it all the way
crazy.
to Australia over there on
Yeah.
the TikTok or whatever you found us on.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think I saw you on TikTok, and then I was like, just flicked over to the podcast and been listening ever since. So
We appreciate
So
it.
happy.
Appreciate it
You
so
got some
much.
great posters in there, too. I
Yeah.
like the Joker poster. That's fantastic.
And I love your shirt. Is that
Yeah.
a cheetah, a leopard? What is that? Did you kill it yourself?
Something like that. But
I feel like that's your style.
native
you-
Australian parent. Yeah.
You have like a gray one, like
Kinda.
like that. Yeah.
A leopard? I don't have
Yeah.
a leopard.
No, you have a gray shirt that's kind of like that, right?
Leopard or animal print?
Animal print.
I don't have any animal print clothing, but maybe I should invest.
Yeah,
I definitely
absolutely.
don't.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Maybe I will because I like that shirt a lot.
I feel like that you could rock that.
I'll rock the fuck out of that.
It's a nice shirt. I get a lot of compliments on it. So yeah, definitely
He's
a good way
rocking
to
it
go.
way better. You look terrific. Now, let's get into our movie quote competition first for the intermission. All right, guys? We'll go one by one. I have a pretty good one. Hopefully that can stump y'all. Anthony, give everyone a chance. I know we all know you like to.
I don't get it right every time.
No, but we know you like to pop off as soon as the question's over. Now, here's my quote competition. You're a very nosy fellow, kitty cat, huh? You know what happens to nosy fellows, huh? No? Wanna guess, huh? No? Okay. They lose their noses. Anthony probably knows.
I know it. Do you know it, bud?
Oh, it sounds so familiar. I just can't. I can't place. I can almost picture the person saying it, but I just can't think of it.
Anthony, go ahead.
It's Chinatown.
Chinatown.
Polanski cuts Jack's nose.
Yeah, he has the cameo. That's the director of the film, everybody.
Mm-hmm. Great quote.
Thanks, man.
I like the impression, too. It's pretty spot on.
Yeah. You're a nosy fellow, kitty cat.
You don't have to do it again. But
I can do it better.
Hold on, recut. Cut. All right, here's my quote. I could have killed them all. I could have killed you. In town, you're the law. Out here, it's me. Don't push it. Don't push it or I'll give you a war you won't believe. Let it go. Let it go.
All right. It's obviously a Western.
Fellas.
I'm feeling Clint Eastwood, maybe?
It's not a Western.
It's not a Western?
It's not a Western.
Not a Western.
Can you say it one more time?
Yeah. Maybe I kind of put a little Southern in there. It's not Southern.
But you want a little Clint.
I almost thought it was a bit of Harrison Ford.
It's because I'm not an actor. I'm not going to do an accent at all, okay? I'm just going to maybe throw you guys
I'm
off.
the law out here.
I could have killed them all. I could have killed you. In town, you're the law. Out here, it's me. Don't push it. Don't push it or I'll give you a war you won't believe. Let it go. Let it go.
Oh, what is this?
You're going to hate yourself.
Oh, my God.
I thought you would get this. I'll give you a war you won't believe. Come on.
I know.
You know that.
It's the let it go thing that's just killing me. Holy crap. One more time, please. Just one more time.
Is it
Ben?
Jeff Bridges?
No, not Jeff Bridges.
Oh.
All right,
I
one
thought
more
it might
time.
have
One more
been
time.
Oh,
then
it's
you-
Rambo.
It's Rambo.
Yeah.
Rambo. They drew first blood.
Well, first blood.
yeah.
Yeah. I knew it. I'd get it, man. So yeah,
Great job.
First blood, not
First
Rambo.
blood, yeah.
But it's the first Rambo.
Yeah. Rambo said it.
Yeah. All right, Ben, what you got?
All right, here we go. I think we drink virgin blood because it sounds cool. It cuts to the other guy. I think it's like this. If you're going to eat a sandwich, you're just going to enjoy it more if you knew no one had fucked it.
Can you say it again?
And he goes, I think we drink virgin blood because it sounds cool. And then it's the second guy. I think it's kind of like this. If you're going to eat a sandwich, you would just enjoy it more if you knew no one had fucked it.
Is it what's it called? What We Do in the Shadows?
What We Do in the Shadows is my guess.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, nice. Jinx.
Good one.
It's the virgin's blood because it's like dry humor.
I saw this great Taika interview where he was doing an interview and he said he was worried while making that and he went to Jermaine Clement and they both directed that film. He's like, do you think that people are gonna like this? This is getting pretty bad. And then Jermaine goes, people need stupid shit.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, the Flight of the Conchords is great. And
Oh,
half of
yeah.
that is just the silliest humor. I
Yeah.
love it. It's
Yeah.
a great quote. All right.
That got me through my younger years. Going out, me and the boys used to always just go around singing Flight of the Conchords and stuff.
Oh, we used
Flight
to
of- you
love
like
it.
Flight of the Conchords?
Yeah,
Oh,
we loved
we-
it.
yeah,
Man,
yeah, love it.
It was on
Absolutely. I
HBO.
think,
or was it-
HBO.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you buy her a kebab? Did you buy her a kebab? Did you walk outside of her?
Every
I
week.
am the rhinoceros.
They have one coffee cup. Remember the coffee cup one? He's like, what about me? They're like, oh my god, I love that show.
I love their rap names. They're the rhinoceros and the hip hop abotamus.
Yeah.
Oh man.
All right, let's do the movie release year quiz, guys. What year did A Few Good Men come out?
I want the truth.
Can't handle the truth, Anthony.
I'm going 1994.
Oh,
Ben?
yeah. I'm going 93. 90, yeah.
The correct answer is 1992.
Ah,
Damn.
Phew.
Good one.
Almost, guys.
Aaron Sorkin coming in hot with that one.
Whew.
That was his first screenplay.
Well, theatrical screenplay? Because he was doing West Wing, right?
West Wing was after that.
Was it?
Yeah.
Damn.
Remember, Mom was watching. West Wing was mid-90s. Yeah. It was around that. Anyways. Guess this movie release here. Copland. Still starring Sylvester Stallone.
1995.
Ben?
1997.
1997 is correct.
Ah! Way to go.
Nice.
Way to go.
James is an idiot.
Wow. Jeez.
Fucking moron.
Whoa, man. We don't need to do that here, okay, man? The cameras are rolling.
That's how I talk to James off camera. I'm a monster.
He is.
So my movie is
Highlander. 19. It's got to be 80s, right? 1989.
1987.
Oh, close. 1986.
Damn.
There can
That's
only
old-
be one.
That's an old movie now.
Yeah.
Holy crap. Almost 40 years old.
Yeah, since Queen's the soundtrack, you got to throw it into the 80s. And then
Oh, yeah.
All right, movie pop quiz time, gentlemen. What films has Robert Downey Jr. received Oscar nominations for acting in?
I'm going to guess that he has 2 nominations for Chaplin and Tropic Thunder.
Ben?
Yes.
Yeah, I would. Chaplin and Tropic Thunder. He was up against Heath Ledger. So I'd go 2. Those 2.
Bing, 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 bing. You guys are correct.
Nice.
If
We're
anyone,
wicked smart.
if anyone hasn't seen Chaplin, watch it ASAP. It's incredible. He should have won.
This is a terrific movie.
It really is.
Okay, here's my quiz question. I went all Stallone today.
Sounds
All
like it.
Sly. How many Rocky movies did Stallone make before he made Rambo First Blood?
And when you say make, you mean directed or just like
How many Rocky movies came out before First
Gotcha.
Blood came out?
I'm going to guess 1.
I guess 2.
3.
Wow.
It came out after Rocky 3 the next year.
I was trying to think of how shredded was he?
He was Rocky 4 shredded.
Yeah, you're
That's
right.
That's why.
Because he was absolutely
He was in great shape in 3, but like Rocky 4 was like the super cut, and he got super cut for Rambo.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But Rambo
that year he was just like ridiculously not an ounce of body fat.
I think he just put everything into Rocky movies for a few years, and then when he had some time, he was like, okay, I finished this arc of the Rocky storyline. I'm gonna do Rambo now.
It's crazy to get your
Because
body in that.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, bud.
Well, Rocky was like his little baby. They got him, shot him up in stardom and stuff like that. So yeah, I suppose that would probably be more priority than this new sort of.
I have a lot of
movies
respect
with
for him. I have so much respect for him because you'd be surprised how many of his movies that he wrote and directed that he starred in.
The work ethic's off the charts too, especially with Rocky 4 because directing and writing and starring in that movie, but also the incredible shape he was in, like the discipline for being that shredded is
No body fat
unsafe.
at all.
That is not a safe thing to do.
Yeah.
He was so dehydrated and out of it every scene. Like in between takes, he would be doing handstands just to get blood flowing into his head because he was just like, he's not eating anything, he's not drinking anything during those sequences for like days. Like he is just like skin tight as hell. So like it's really he looks incredible, but that's so unsafe.
Yeah.
Especially when you're making a movie.
He looks like a comic book character in that movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That physique is insane.
He had to compete with Arnold,
Yeah.
What do we got next? We have pop quiz from Ben.
Yeah.
So mine is just let me
I
find
love
it.
how we always end up talking about a man's physique.
It's pretty frequent. It's every episode.
That's it. What was the first feature-length animated movie ever released?
I'm going to go Steamboat Willie for feature length.
Yeah, I'll say that as well. Steamboat Willie.
Copycat.
That was gonna be my guess.
According to my sources. It's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Oh, Steamboat Willie must not have been a feature then.
Yeah, it was probably
must have been short. Yeah. Wow.
Holy
Wow,
crap.
that's pretty late for.
Do you
a
have the
feature
year
length.
on that? Was that like
53.
1952?
53 or something?
That's like, I'm pretty sure Snow White's 1930 something, isn't it?
Is it?
I
See,
I'll
Snow
look it up.
White and the Seven Dwarfs original.
1937.
Whoa.
Wow. Yeah, so that movie actually that made Disney a viable studio. It made like $7 million at the box office
418 million box office.
for inflation. Yeah, but it did huge numbers, and that allowed them to make more films. Like that was the big hit for them.
Holy
That was
crap. Yeah, made
Although their next few releases were actually pretty lackluster in comparison.
Yeah.
And then they hit off again with Bambi did really well, and Cinderella did really well.
Right now, it's still domestically number 10 all-time box
Wow.
office,
Wow.
adjusted for inflation. That's crazy. Number 10.
It's beautiful too. Beautiful animation.
It is beautiful. Hey, Anthony, do we have any haters this week or any unsubscribes?
we got some haters. We got some haters. I have one real hater. I put it in our story, but we posted a clip of Prisoners on TikTok, and then this guy on TikTok wrote, "It was a good movie. Seen better, but still good."
Seen better? Like, you don't have to write that.
Like, what kind of comment is that?
What the hell?
That's unbelievable.
I mean, yeah, there are better movies, but that's just like so demeaning to a movie. Yeah, I've seen better.
Unreal. All right, next up, I posted a clip of another Prisoners clip about the hint that Denis Villeneuve gave to the audience of who the killer was, and I wrote in the caption, "Anyone catch this?" ? And then Jay Roman wrote, "You about to catch these hands, brah? Unsubscribed."
That might be my favorite ever.
And then our Prisoners episode, Spencer Girk wrote, "Are you guys trying to get demonetized by saying Alex Jones so much? Unsubscribe."
I was honestly worried when we were recording
When
the
we were recording, I
episode.
was like, we keep saying Alex Jones a lot.
And then we were watching. I'm like, holy crap, his name's Alex Jones. I
Yeah.
like double checked. I'm like, it's his name.
Yeah. But I didn't even know who that person was until well after I saw this movie. So that's okay.
The first time you saw the movie?
Yeah.
Years ago? Yeah.
Next up, in our Born Identity episode, user NW7 wrote, "Swiss is not a language. In Zurich, we speak Swiss German." Unsubscribed.
Sorry.
Thank you for the clarification.
That's so cool. People from Zurich listen to us.
Yeah. And then in TikTok, King of the North 77, I didn't initially realize that it was an unsubscribe comment.
Did you go back and forth with them?
Just once. He wrote, because I said it was the clip where we're talking about how it inspired Casino Royale in its approach to Bond,
Yeah.
how Bourne inspired the change in Bond. And King of the North wrote, "Jason Bourne 2016 truly is a masterpiece," but it came out after Bond. Unsubscribed. I kind of skimmed it because it was just like I did so many comments. Sometimes when you reply to like 50 comments in 10 minutes, you kind of just get like
I just don't
brain
do that
fuzz.
anymore, dude.
And
On
so I
TikTok.
wrote, "Bro, Identity came out in 2002." And then they wrote, "Never heard of it." I'm pretty sure 2016 Jason Bourne is a standalone film.
King of the North.
And then I wrote, "He's absolutely right."
And there's nothing-
Way to go, King of the North. Troll Anthony all the time.
Roasted me on that one. I deserved it.
You did
That was
deserve it.
great, though. What a great response. I'm pretty sure it's a standalone. And then in our Born Supremacy episode, user SG2 wrote, "In your Eternals episode over a year ago, you called Harry Styles' character Skyfox when it's actually Star Fox." Unsubscribed.
I did that. That was me. Does it matter? Sky Fox, Star Fox, same fucking thing. It's Harry Styles.
I like how they commented it in a different episode, though. Oh, man.
Oh, that's good.
We have a funny one.
We have a great new 5-star review from Gianfranco Chaladis, the best film podcast. If you're looking for a film podcast to listen to, this is probably the one for you. And I'm not even saying that because I'm a fellow Massachusetts native. This is the podcast that really got me into podcasts as I've been going back and listening to their old episodes. And I can't get enough. Keep up the great work. Love to hear from a fellow masshole.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, pal.
Another Bostonian guy.
Yeah, kid. All right, that wraps up our intermission. Oh, wait. Oh, stream
Hold on.
recommendations. streaming recommendations. I'll go first. Mine is season 1 of True Detective on HBO Max. It's incredible. I highly recommend watching it soon because we might be covering it
very soon.
We are covering it.
We're covering it. We'll give you some time to watch.
No need to be cryptic, Jim.
It wasn't exactly cryptic.
My streaming recommendation is Dr. Zhivago, made by David Lean in 1965. It's one of the greatest films I've ever seen. It's not available for free anytime soon, but you can rent it pretty much anywhere. I rented it on Amazon for $2.99, and it's well worth it. Make sure you rent it, though, and don't stream it because you want the high quality. It's just one of the most gorgeously filmed movies of all time. An incredible story, remarkable performances. It's just hands down, flat out, one of the greatest films I've ever seen in my life.
Number 8 on the all-time adjusted for inflation domestic box office
Yeah,
as well.
what, 285 million tickets or something?
Something
sold?
ridiculous.
Yeah,
Something
so it was
ridiculous.
extremely successful when it came out, and it's just a remarkable film. I adore it.
$1.2 billion adjusted for inflation.
Wow, that's crazy.
Wow.
For a 3.5-hour movie, that's pretty impressive.
Woo. People used to like good movies, man.
Coming in hot with that one.
Facts are facts. All right, Ben, do you have a recommendation?
Yeah, I'd recommend Ted Lasso on Apple. It is I'm not a massive, I'm not really into soccer, but it is a phenomenal series. The third season's about to come out on the 15th of March, so if you haven't seen it, you should definitely try and watch the first 2 seasons and get on it. It's great.
I've heard nothing but great things about that show. I think
Same.
I'm going to watch it. Also, in Australia, do you call it soccer or football?
We call it soccer. Yeah.
all right.
I didn't know that. Are
So
we the
our-
only 2 countries in the world?
Probably.
Yeah.
Well, our football is AFL, so the Aussie rules. And then, then you sort of, I suppose you got the American football, which we call American football, but it would just be, it's very much more closer to rugby sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then our footy's just AFL and
Footy.
but soccer is getting very very big over here because a lot of people from England coming over and they're dominating it over here. But yeah,
Oh, getting some paychecks coming over here. I love that.
Happens in America too.
Did you know that I just found out that Marcus Mumford does all the music for Ted Lasso?
Yeah,
That's super cool.
because he's friends with
Sudeikis.
yeah.
Because Sudeikis was, remember that one of their music videos was Sudeikis, Bateman, Ed Helms, Galifianakis.
so good, that video.
that was a great video. That was a great video.
is it Will Forte? Yeah,
Will Forte.
Will Forte, yeah. Will Forte.
yeah.
Get it right, man. All right.
I'm sorry, Will. He's a big fan of the show.
He's a $2 patron. Sure, he can afford more, but he's just down there at $2. Let's get back into our episode about talking about the box office, studios, and I have a quick question for you, Ben. How many times a year would you say you go to the theaters to see a film?
It has changed dramatically since I've had children, but prior to, and also, so this would be prior to COVID. So I used to go at least once a week, pretty much. It was, I absolutely love the movies, love going to the movies and sitting in there and just, shutting off my mind for those 2 hours. Like, you can't be distracted when you watch a movie at home. You can pause it, you can leave, someone can call you away. You're going to take that phone call. Whereas when you're in the movie theater, it's just, much, much greater experience. So yeah, I used to go very, very, very regularly. And then now, unfortunately, it's only dropped down to, maybe once a month. Or
Those
something
damn
like that.
kids.
But
It's
I try-
still pretty good. Once a month
Yeah.
is still pretty good, though.
No, yeah, it's more than average.
yeah.
Still more than average.
Because on average, it's about 3 to 5 per year for the average person, but not for enthusiastic moviegoers.
People our age, it's about 7 to 10 per year.
For like moviegoers,
Yeah.
for like fans, but still it's down to about 3 to 4
Wow,
for people
for
in
our
our
age
age
group.
group because, well, that was according to 2021. It's probably been going up slowly,
Yeah.
but I would say it's probably about 5.
How many times do we go a year? Probably like 30 to 40 times a year.
Easily, man.
Yeah.
It's pretty ridiculous. We see every major release, but also we see lots of independent film. I would
Yeah.
say probably like 40 to 50 times last
Yeah.
year I went to the movie theaters.
Yeah, for sure. Same.
I think I've been like
The
5
dream.
times. Yeah.
Yeah. 10 a.m. matinees are my favorite. Those are my favorite.
But we watch a lot of movies though. Do you still watch a lot of films streaming at home?
Yeah, absolutely. Like that was, when COVID hit and everything was sort of getting released, it was great for me. Like I was like, I see everything earlier. Absolutely. I'm glad they're back in the theaters. But yeah, as soon as they sort of come out on straight to demand, we'll get it and watch it and see it that way as soon as we can. So like, I hate not know it. Like when a movie's come out, everyone's like, "Oh, it's really good." If I don't get to see it, like I try to avoid everything I can, so I don't nothing gets spoiled too much. And that was one of the good things. But I'm glad it's starting to turn back and everything. So no theaters and stuff like that. So
I posted my letterbox for February online, and I got a lot of funny hate comments because it was only 16 movies. But there's 2 reasons. First of all, we got Hogwarts Legacy in February.
Yes.
So a lot of my movie time was supplemented by flying around Hogwarts, and then I watched 5 movies that are over 3 hours long too. So and a couple of them were over 4 hours.
Yeah,
so.
I think I watched 3 or 4 movies that were over 3 hours long for
Yeah.
sure. I watched a lot of old movies.
But lots of Hogwarts Legacy in February. So I didn't have that many movies on my watch list that month.
yeah, we're busy, man. It's a short month.
I already got 4 in March, and it's only the 5th, so
Yeah.
I'm getting those numbers back up.
I would love to talk about the highest grossing films of all time, as well as the most profitable films of all time, and the films that have the largest return on investment. And there are 3 differences between these.
Yeah.
So let me run through the list of the highest grossing films of all time. This means the most money made total for that film at the box office, not necessarily how much it made return on investment or profit. So the all-time gross leader is Avatar the original. It's at $2.9 billion. Avengers Endgame at $2.8 billion. Avatar The Way of Water, $2.2 billion. Titanic, $2.2 billion. Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens at $2 billion. Avengers Infinity War, $2 billion. Spider-Man No Way Home, $1.9 billion. Jurassic World, $1.6 billion. That's why they keep making those. The Lion King, $1.6 billion. The Avengers, which is the original Avengers. Didn't it just used to be called Avengers when it came out?
Marvel's The Avengers is what it was called.
Now it's The Avengers,
Yeah.
$1.5 billion. Furious 7, that's the Fast franchise, not just an angry person. Furious 7, $1.5 billion.
Did you see that TikTok about the guy who jokes about how every title is completely different?
Yeah, they don't even
from
know
the
what
one before.
It's like The Fast and the Furious, then Fast and Furious, Too Fast, Too Furious,
Then just Furious 7,
and then just
Fast
Tokyo
9.
yeah,
Drift.
the numbers are all over the place. Yeah.
F9, the Fast Saga.
Crazy. Top Gun Maverick at $1.49 billion. Frozen 2, $1.4 billion. Avengers Age of Ultron, $1.4 billion. Black Panther, $1.3 billion. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, $1.3 billion. Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi, $1.3 billion. Jurassic World, The Fallen Kingdom, $1.3 billion. Frozen, $1.2 billion. And then Beauty and the Beast at $1.2 billion also. And every one of these movies has been released from 2009 and on. That's the top 20 highest grossing movies of all time. And that's just box office total. You know, that's not factoring in ticket sales like we talked about earlier, as well as inflation.
That's not profit.
Now,
That's just total. Can I guess what the next 2 are?
on that list.
No, for most profitable and then highest profit margin.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I'm guessing Paranormal Activity for highest profit margin, and then Black Swan for most profitable.
All right, so let's go to return on investment. We'll start with that. Now, this is obviously how much money you're making in terms of how much you're investing in the film. Number 1 is actually Deep Throat, which came out in 1972. $25,000 budget made $22 million. Facing the Giants, $100,000 budget, $38 million box office. Now, Paranormal Activity, there's a misconception how much that budget was. It's actually higher than people think. A lot of people think it was like $10,000, but it was actually reworked a little bit and was all the way up to, I think it was like $90 million for a budget.
$90 million?
Something like that, yeah.
What? For a budget?
Yeah.
Wait, $90 million.
It was reworked.
For Paranormal Activity?
For Paranormal, let me double check. I'm pulling it up. Pulling it up.
Wait, that movie was $90 million, bro.
No, I mean 90,000. I'm sorry.
This fucking guy.
90,000.
He's like, yeah, $90 million for the cheapest looking movie ever.
It's tasteful.
You were
They
so dead
advertised the hell
serious.
out of that when it came out.
Yeah, you got a big market.
That's how you wash money. You make a. You say you're making
$90 million. I was like, how high are you?
Imagine you give someone $90 million to make a movie and they make that. You're like, where did the fucking money go? It was
Visual effects, man.
but it was about 90 million, 90,000. I'm sorry.
What is wrong with you?
I can't talk sometimes. $192 million, but the budget again went to about $200,000 total because original production was $15,000, but then it got reworked with an extra $200,000 for
Post-production, yeah.
So that actually wasn't as high on the list of profitable films. So actually, budget $200,000. Still very successful film.
It wasn't $200 million?
No. Now let's get back into our return on investment list. Let me get back in because I had to just Google my mistake.
I can't believe you actually Googled to make sure Paranormal Activity wasn't $90 million
No,
budget.
to get the box office.
Okay.
The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original, for a budget of $140,000, made $14 million. The Gallows in 2015, $100,000 budget, made $7 million. Eraserhead, directed by David Lynch, first movie, $100,000 budget, $4.6 million. An Inconvenient Truth in 2006, $1 million budget, $46 million. And the list just keeps going on and on. Now profitable, I want to talk about. Profitable. Let's see what we got here for the most profitable films of all time. And this is also factoring in the percent on investment return. Now, number one is My Big Fat Greek Wedding, according to CNBC. Return on investment on this was 6,150% on a budget of $6 million. It grossed $370 million worldwide. That movie was crazy successful. E.T., budget of $25 million, made $793 million. Slumdog Millionaire, $15 million budget, $375 million global. That's absurd. Pretty Woman, $23 million, $463 million global.
Whoa.
Grease was $20 million, pulled in $394 million globally. Star Wars, the original in 1997, budget of $40 million, pulled in $775 million. American Beauty in 1999, $20 million budget, $356 million box office. Number 8, Passion of the Christ in 2004, budget of only $35 million, pulled in $612 million. Home Alone, $30 million, pulled in $477 million at the box office. Then number 10 we have on this list, we have Ghost in 1990, $35 million budget, grossed $506 million. And you can keep going through movies like this. Jaws is on here. The Hangover is on here. I mean, The Hangover, $36 million, pulled $467 million. But then we even have a movie like Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, budget of $111 million, made $1.1 billion.
That budget was only $111 million?
So there's $300 million basically total for all three.
That's crazy.
Just that
That's
one movie.
absurd. Only $111 million. That's like the average
Even
big studio.
300,000 for the whole trilogy. You look at how amazing that turned out, and that was. Then you look at The Hobbit. Like I know, The Hobbit's still great movies, but imagine their budget compared to The Lord of the Rings, and
it's nuts.
Yeah,
I believe each of those budgets was closer to $200 million for each movie.
For what, The Hobbit?
Yeah,
probably.
Mm.
So it's crazy to see how much money movies can actually make. When you make just a great film, you don't have to put $200 million into a budget. You can still make a great profit. And I mean, $10 million profit is still a successful film. $100 million is obviously even more successful. But that's why I wish studios would go back to that $30 to $50 million budget for these productions and these movies, because you can still make a really great movie that could just take storm and just make a ton of money. I mean, My Big Fat Greek Wedding pulling in over $400 million on a $60 million budget, that's insane.
Yeah, and I mean, the kinds of movies that make a boatload of money at the box office have changed from decade to decade. And we often say I mean, I think the quality of storytelling is it was so great in the 60s and 70s, and then now it's really franchises and sequels. I mean, the past couple of years, in 2022, I believe, 2022, the top 10 movies were all sequels except for the Batman, but it's still basically, it's a franchise. But like the top 10 were Top Gun Maverick, Black Panther 2, Avatar 2, Doctor Strange 3, Jurassic World Dominion, Minions, Rise of Gru, The Batman, Thor Love and Thunder, Spider-Man No Way Home, Sonic the Hedgehog 2. All sequels except for the Batman, which is still, it's the 10th Batman movie. So,
and that's why Warner Brothers is changing the ending to I Am Legend to make a sequel.
yeah, but then you look at movies like the top 2 movies of 1965, The Sound of Music and Dr. Zhivago. Like, those are remarkable movies and historical movies and incredible. In 1957, The Bridge on the River Kwai was the highest grossing film of that year. In 1969, Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid was the #1 movie at the box office that year.
Even going back to 2000, though, with Castaway being the #1 movie
Castaway,
at the box office. It's an awesome movie.
In 1973, The Exorcist with 109 million tickets sold. And then The Sting, which is another Robert Redford, Paul Newman film, was #2. And then George Lucas's American Graffiti. That was the top 3 of that year. Like, that's really amazing. They're all original films with, like, incredible stories that had never been seen before. And then in the 80s, like I mentioned earlier, the 80s is really where franchises started. You get Back to the Future. So in 1985, it went Back to the Future, Rambo 2, Beverly Hills Cop, Rocky 4. And then we get The Goonies, Police Academy 2. Those are in the top 10 in that year. The 80s is where franchises started really taking off. And then in 1996 was like the year and decade of action movies, where that year Independence Day, Twister, Mission Impossible, The Rock, and Ransom were the top 5 movies of that year. So franchises and high concept, big budget action movies really dominated. And now we're in the 2000s, the 2010s, 2020s. Franchises, IPs, comic books, remakes, sequels are really, really dominating box office charts.
That's a really good point. I never thought about it like that. There's no Sound of Music, too.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm kind of worried, like, the fact that the top movies of 2022 were all sequels.
I'm not worried about Top Gun. Like, that was awesome.
Oh, yeah, but still, it's a sequel.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's the obsession. I saw this great quote from Ryan Reynolds, actually, this morning, talking about Free Guy and how that was a successful film, but how the studio already wants to make a sequel. And he said, like, why do we have to make a sequel to everything? Like, can't we just make a movie?
Yeah.
Like, do we have to make a sequel to Free Guy? Does anyone even want a sequel to that?
Well, no, there's this thing where it's like we have this addiction to something new product, new iPhone, new app, new thing. And it's like, once a movie comes out, people are like, when's the next one come out? Like, remember when Spider-Man No Way Home came out? Literally, the next day, everyone's like, is Tom Holland going to be in the next Spider-Man? Like,
well, Amazing Spider-Man 3 was trending for months.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just
When's
studios.
coming
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's this fervor in the public of, we always need we always need something new. Like, we can never embrace, like, all the headlines about Creed 3 are about, is Creed 4 happening? Michael B. Jordan confirms Creed 4. Like, why are we talking about Creed 4? Creed 3 just came out. Like, why do we always... There's this obsession with the next one, obsession with something new. Even when something is new, we're already moving on to the next one. And so it's not just studios. It's like a lot of people just, like, they're obsessed with, like, I want the next one. This isn't enough. Where's the next one happening? Is Tom Holland going to be in the next Peter Parker again? Like, let's enjoy the movie. It just came out. You know what I mean?
Here we go again.
Here we go again. Somebody left the fridge open.
It's true. Although I cannot wait to see Mission Impossible 7 this year and John Wick 4.
The thing is, as well, everyone's after those good old Easter eggs, and now it's so they you get all these sequels. Everyone's looking for these amazing things, and when people are doing the sequels, but they sort of want to do their own original ideas with them, people get so disappointed. They're like, oh no, it's nothing to do with how I thought that was going to go, or
it's not part of the canon.
Set up this, so, yeah, and so you can't sort of win with it as well. Like,
it's lose-lose. It's hard to please.
We've become like an Easter egg type of world now. Everyone wants, oh, did you see that little funny thing in that and all that? Oh, that means this and that means this. And sometimes a movie can just mean,
there's an obsession with, like, analyzing movies before they come out too. Like there's so many YouTube channels that overanalyze trailers, and like I just saw images someone posted on Instagram of Joker 2 filming, and it gave away a clear spoiler, and I'm
I
like,
don't want to look at them.
I wish I didn't see that,
Yeah.
because now I like that. I want to walk into Joker 2 not knowing anything about it, but then the people are just like constantly just for attention, for views, for clicks, for likes. We're gonna overanalyze this trailer. I'm gonna break it down frame by frame.
We've done that a bit, though. Everything we know about Oppenheimer.
We didn't break down we didn't say. Well, no, we were theorizing, but people were like
No, I know.
analyzing frames of a trailer to try and pull out spoilers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We didn't do that with Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
We were just talking about the general story, idea, our theories and thoughts of the film's trailer. We weren't like, here's a screen grab. Okay, there's definitely shows evidence that this character is going to show up, and then this is probably going to happen. Like, hey, this actor.
What
like,
brand hat is he wearing?
Yeah.
Like,
so much
Also, the
overanalyzing.
Trailer doesn't really give away too much, whereas
Exactly.
a lot of the ones where I think you guys might have spoken about with the trailers these days, they give away the whole movie. You're like, what do I need to go to the movie for? I've just seen it in that
Ant-Man 3.
2 minutes.
I'm sorry.
We saw the whole Ant-Man movie in its trailer.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know if you've gotten to the theater to see it, but the trailer is the movie.
Yeah, I did. I managed to get to go see that.
Oh man. Yeah, but I'm really glad that the box office is coming back, that people are going back to theaters, and I'm excited for this year to see what the box office is going to be like. We have some really big movies coming out. We have, obviously, Oppenheimer. Nolan's movies, they are usually very successful. Tenet was his first bomb. Well, I mean,
It wasn't a bomb. It made $350 million.
but it didn't make its money back.
Yeah.
You know, it lost money.
But
That's
to make that much money during lockdown,
That's
it's
insane.
I think it's so
Yeah,
impressive.
But that was like
Yeah.
a $250 million budget
Yeah.
movie. That was one of the biggest
was
movies
his most
ever
expensive.
made at the time.
Yeah.
So like to see his movie still make that much during lockdown. We drove to San Diego to see that. I can't wait to see what the numbers look like for Oppenheimer, and I really hope people go see it, because I think it's going to be a really important and interesting film for audiences to see in box office going forward.
Well, what makes Nolan special is because of his brand and because his fans like us are so devout and will just turn out to whatever he makes. It kind of, his films, Oppenheimer is an example of it. It's kind of like those films that came out in the 70s where it was just a really unique idea, historical fiction, and it's going to dominate the box office just like those movies used to dominate the box office. And that's what I think Nolan's so special. Tarantino is still like that. He's so special where he can make a movie like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and it can make over $200 million. So we still have filmmakers like that where they're still telling unique original stories, avoiding, I mean, obviously Nolan's made his fair share of fucking gigantic action movies, but at least he's trying to make other movies too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm very excited about that. John Wick 4, I think, is going to demolish. Mission Impossible 7 is going to demolish. These movies are going to eat. You know,
It's going to be a big year.
I think it's going to be a huge year, maybe $30 billion at the global box office, which is, you know, starting to get those numbers back up, which would be awesome.
We have some Instagram poll questions if you want to get into them.
Let's do it, guys.
So, Millie Jacksteed wrote, "Why do we care so much about domestic when films are shown worldwide?" That's actually a very good question. I would say because it showcases the cultures and what our culture is interested in, but also studios profit less on international releases. They get less of a profit margin for films distributed outside of America.
I mean, most of the movies we see, most movies that come out every year are made in the United States or domestically.
Yeah.
So that's why, you know, Hollywood's in America. It's not like, let's only talk about America statistics. It's just because that's usually the most important, because this is where the studios are. You know, they're making their movies here. This is where they're located. So they're domestic films for this country in North America. So that's why we talk about domestic.
Next, LB Galaz wrote, "What are the logistics to get to know the movie theater's box office that fast around the globe?" We like to use a metric site called Box Office Mojo. They're pretty airtight with their analytics. Forbes is really good as well with their numbers. Initially, analysts will project a weekend by Friday. Depending on how much it makes Thursday and Friday, they can basically project with a lot of accuracy what the overall weekend for an opening weekend of a film will be. That's why we actually record our movie news on Saturday, even though we do the box office numbers, because by Saturday, analysts know pretty sure what the numbers are going to be for a film. They can just basically say, it made this much Friday and Saturday, it's going to make this much Sunday, so here's the total box office for that weekend. So most of it's mostly projections, and then you get the real final numbers on Monday.
The real ones.
The real numbers. Caleb Jeter wrote, "What is a good box office for an indie film?"
As long as it makes, probably like 50% above the budget, or even not even that much, but like if it's a $10 million movie, if it makes $15 million, that's solid, as long as it's profitable, but also as long as it makes enough money to deem, the filmmakers a budget to make another movie, or deems the studio to stay with keeping the rent on so they don't have to sell to a corporation like Disney or something like that, because you'd be shocked how many independent studios have sold to Disney or big major corporations. So as profitable enough to justify those filmmakers, screenwriters, cast and crew to make another movie, as well as for the independent studio to stay relevant and keep making movies and pay for movies.
Yeah, break even and then some. It doesn't have to be a huge
It doesn't have to be like $100 million on a $20 million budget,
If it makes profit, then that gives the filmmaker another chance to make another movie. They become viably profitable, and it allows for a studio to take a risk on them.
Yeah.
Like, hey, your last movie made $5 million in profit. Okay, let's give you a little bit more money and see what you can do.
Yeah, there's a lot of filmmakers that make movies that, still profit $10 million at every time. They keep getting to make movies because their movies are profitable.
Yeah, and some of my favorite filmmakers, their movies just never make boatloads of money. But, I mean, it's just as long as you're making some money, that's good. Why is it called the box office from Bryce2327?
I have no idea.
Do you know, Ben? I don't know why.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. It's a good question.
Let's see. Box office origins.
Because isn't it at the front of the theater? It used to be the little box.
It was the box office.
Right?
Yeah, that's what it is.
Tickets from.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's the box office. Yeah, that's definitely why. Because of the
Box
clerk
office sales,
stand.
maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We're a couple of bozos.
Yeah, we are. All right. Evan Smith wrote, "Is there an exact amount that each movie theater takes home, like a set percentage?" But also this ties to C.R. Dutta, who decides when the theater starts to make more money from ticket sales. We basically covered that. Each deal is different from film to film, from studio to theater. And so they're basically all individual contracts and licensing agreements, and they all vary. But generally, it'll be around the same ballpark of what we said earlier.
Here's one from Your Mansion. Will Netflix ever try to make more box office money with full theatrical releases? I'm sure at some point they're going to have to start to, but they've been going through some pretty solid growth the last couple quarters. The beginning of 2022, they did take a dive. They dropped to almost close to 2 million subscribers, but they've managed to get back, and they've actually, I think, increased upwards of 6 million subscribers in the last
password thing worked?
half a year. Yeah, no, they're just starting to initiate that now. But as long as they keep their market share, I don't see them doing theatrical releases because they just don't seem to care. I mean, they could have made $100 million box office with Glass Onion, but they just chose to release it for 2 days and made $10 million.
Yeah, good point. Alex Demsel, how much does it bench? New PI, bro. New PR. MT Riley, this is a good question. How do you get more people to see other movies other than big blockbuster Marvel, DC, etc.? I would say at this point, there's really no way to, because this year, 2022 was a great example of there were a dozen excellent movies, like really great movies, high quality, incredible narratives, original ideas, terrific acting, filmmaking, absolute incredible pieces of cinema that nobody saw in America. And we actually talked about it. I mean, movies like Triangle of Sadness, Decision to Leave, After Sun. There are a bunch of films like that. They got exposure. They're billboards. They're get marketing. You can see them online on social media. But it just didn't seem like people were motivated to see them. And I don't see how you can do any different because they are phenomenal movies. I just think there's a lack of interest in those movies nowadays. And I'm not sure that it'll ever change from now on. What do you guys think? Do you think that audiences will start to see movies like that anytime soon, or are they just going to be sticking to the big guns?
I mean, I hope so, but to see Decision to Leave just do so poorly at the box office. But, Everything Everywhere All at Once breaking $100 million was huge, but also that was the one thing. That was the one movie really that was just so independently produced, but still a pretty solid budget. That's $30 million budget. Unfortunately, I don't really see that happening at this moment.
Yeah.
Maybe because I think there's superhero fatigue going on. You know,
Well, I mean, is it going on because these movies didn't do well?
but it's been like a relevant thing the last like year.
Yeah, well, there's superhero fatigue, but it's not making people go see these movies, is what I'm saying.
No, I know, but maybe
You know?
it's going to take the fatigue's catching up to people now that
Maybe.
we've been seeing the last couple of films. I mean, just to tie into, we'll take one more question from Dawson, who asked, what happened to Marvel getting easy billions on their movies? Kind of ties into that as well, where maybe people are less interested in superhero movies. Maybe we'll start to see an increase in independent film. I mean, look at independent horror film in 2022, decimated. We had a lot of hits in independent horror, so I think that's a very healthy genre right now.
Well, Smile wasn't an independent film; it was Universal.
Well, still like low budget films, I guess you could say.
But I'm talking about independently made films, not made in a studio system.
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever. We'll just get maybe a couple random hits every
And
year.
also, high concept horror film, it's like kind of guaranteed success nowadays.
Yeah, close to that.
What do you think, Ben? Do you think people are gonna start seeing more artistic, independent films anytime soon?
I think they need to, because the way it's all going is everything is just going to be these big budget things at the theaters. It's I'm same sort of problem with me. I don't get to the theater that much, but if I go, it tends to be those bigger movies, and I don't go. If some of the lower budget movies come out, I go, I can wait and I can watch that in my theater room or something like that. And unfortunately, that's the way things are going, and I'm guilty of it. But people need to go out and do it, because otherwise they're going to go, and they're going to become, they already don't have this massive budget that everyone expects. So if no one's going to see them, the budget's just possibly going to get smaller and smaller, and then
Ben's like part of this. Oh, keep going.
No.
You're part of this population that you don't have a lot of time, and you go to the movies maybe 10 times a year, and obviously you're gonna see the culturally very relevant things, the big budget stuff. You're obviously a fan like superhero movies, big budget action films, like we all are. So those are obviously the movies you're gonna more geared to see versus the other 15 movies that are super low budget, independently produced that you'll just catch streaming wise. I think a lot of people are in that position. That kind of reveals a lot to people who either aren't very enthusiastic about going to the movies. When they go to see a movie, they're going to see the big blockbuster film. They're going to go see Tom Cruise.
Yeah. They're
going to go see a superhero. They're going to see something really cool like that. And I mean, that ties into Dawson again. Your question: what happened to Marvel getting easy billions on their movies? I think Marvel, they hit that crazy peak of Infinity War and Endgame, building up these characters for 15 years, and then finding the culmination of that world and those characters and the saga was incredible and so anticipated. And this is before they were purchased by Disney, that these movies were written, they were going to be produced. So like, it wasn't like, then obviously Disney's taken over, and we've obviously seen a shift in quality, but also the stakes aren't there right now. Maybe the stakes will get back there once they start building the Kang dynasty, if that's what's going to be going forward. Like with Thanos, Kang is the big bad, but starting to build up the characters for the next saga and then bringing the X-Men into it as well. I guarantee they'll get back to like massive numbers once X-Men and Avengers and Marvel characters are all in films together. But it's going to take a while, I think. But that's also why. But also, I think superhero fatigue is real.
Yeah, and this actually also ties to Tyler Matthew Moda's question. He asked, are we currently seeing the death of mid-budget movies? And we actually did in the 2010s. They kind of like started being non-existent. And also, there's a problem I'm seeing where, I mean, not a problem, but like people, from what I've seen, so an example of Banshees of Inisherin. Loved the film, saw it twice. It's on HBO Max if you haven't seen it. It's really remarkable. And I saw a clip of it of Barry Keoghan and his line. I'm talking to Carrie Condon's character. He's like, would you ever think about falling in love with a girl like you ever think about falling in love with a boy like me? It's like a great little line, really touching scene, a lot of depth to it. And one of the best scenes of the film. I saw it. It was a reel on Instagram, and it had like 10 million views, hundreds of thousands of comments, like 1 million likes. And it's like, that's probably how most people are going to watch that movie, from just a couple of clips on Instagram or on TikTok. And they're not going to actually watch it on HBO Max, because if that movie got that many views, it would have been a hit. And
I mean, ticket sales didn't even sell 1 million, probably.
it made like 2-3 million box office. So I find that it's like kind of sad. Like so many people, their only exposure to that film is gonna be like an Instagram reel of one of the clips, one scene from the film, or like another one that went viral was Patrick talking to Colum in the bar, like cussing him out basically about not being nice. It was a huge viral clip on TikTok, millions and millions of views. But it's like, how many of those people are actually going to go watch the movie? They're probably just going to watch the clip on TikTok and then move on and watch the next thing. So it's kind of sad that like a film like that, which is really special, I think, it's not going to get any kind of meaningful viewership for the film. And it's just basically, it's like little bits of it are going to get a lot higher viewership. You know what I mean?
But over time, I'm sure people will see it.
I hope so.
I think people will see it
so.
over time. You guys got anything else? Ben, you got anything else you want to bring up, talk about?
I mean, it's a bit different. Like we have over here, like everything is an Americanized over here to a degree. But even with these releases, like we sometimes have a massive delay in the lower budget movies. Like it might come out. Like I think The Whale came out for you guys, end of last year, was it? Or...
December.
Yeah, we saw it a while ago.
Yeah, and I think it's only just starting to get released here now, sort of thing. You know, like
Wow.
so then you guys are going by you guys get the numbers. Okay, so here's your what's coming back, and it hasn't even hit some of the countries yet to get that full. Yeah, so it's interesting, like. So yeah, you've almost got to wait a year for it to be out everywhere to finally see how much it's earned.
Yeah, in every market.
Yeah, but yeah, other than that, yeah,
I think it's because they send the movies to Australia on Robo.
yeah, that's it.
I knew you were gonna say something stupid. You guys are late with products too, right? Or at least back in the day, like you'd have to wait to get like the next like fashionable thing or trendy thing.
Yeah, I think so.
Like I think like back in the day,
it wasn't fashionable until it got to us. So
yeah.
Okay, this is the new
The
thing.
rowboats, guys.
Yeah, we were just that little bit behind.
nothing like taking a rowboat across the Atlantic.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I mean, if you leave in the West Coast, go Pacific.
I just learned something funny about Australia, that you guys had a war against emus and lost.
Yeah, lost the war.
Emus were decimating farms and agriculture, and so the military set up like this war against emus, and they tried to kill them. But the emus were too smart and evasive, and they just gave up after 2 days.
Sounds like Return of the Jedi with their Ewoks.
Exactly.
Yeah, the Great Emu War. Yep.
I think 5 emus were killed. Yeah.
I'm going.
But they're scary. If you ever look them in the eyes, they're quite
terrifying.
scary.
They're really big too. They're massive.
Yeah. Just stand face to face with them. He's okay. Yeah, no. Take the top.
I think that'd be a funny movie. Wouldn't that be a funny movie?
What, the War of the Emus versus humans?
Yeah.
And make the emus
And then we
the
get viral
characters.
clips of someone fighting a kangaroo. But yeah.
Man, well, Ben, we appreciate you so much for being a patron and coming on the show. It means the world to us. We love to hear that we have supporters and fans from different countries around the world, halfway across the planet, all the way in Australia. We got a huge fan base down there, so we appreciate you so much. Thanks again for being a patron, coming on the show. Hope you had a good time.
Watch parties are always
Okay.
fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
we like to have you at watch parties if it's a time that you can make.
You have the attention of
Yeah.
all the
I do try to get
followers
on
and
when I
listeners. Do you want to say anything to everybody before we shut down the episode?
Maybe talk about how much better you like me than James.
Which
No,
one's paying me more? So yeah.
we know that's not true, Anthony.
Anthony slips a little cash under the table. Yeah, Anthony.
Oh yeah.
So we'll talk about it
No,
later.
thank
I'll
you
Venmo
so
you.
much for having me. It's been great to be on. Love the show, and yeah, it's just great to listen to. And I do a lot of driving at work, so it's always. I look forward to hearing your voices in the morning. You know?
Aw.
So
Appreciate that. That's so
Appreciate that
great.
so much.
Oh man, it's amazing.
It's touching.
Glad that we can entertain you on your drives.
Ben, thanks so much. All of you can become patrons easily by going to
Easy.
patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost Podcast. Ben's in the $100 tier, so he got to come on the show. If you want to do that, you got to do that as well. But we have $2, $5, $10, $25, and $100 tier. So whatever's in your budget, we will graciously accept and graciously accept. I invented a word for Patreon only. Anthony's gonna shop at Trader Joe's, so you guys are helping him get his orange chicken.
I don't get the orange chicken.
Kung Pao chicken.
I get the Kung Pao. Yeah. I'm not.
And pesto wraps.
It's just too much fried batter on the orange chicken.
So good,
It's
though.
delicious, but only once in a while.
But thank you
Anyways.
so much for tuning in around the world. All you Australians out there, hopefully Ben represented those emos real well for you. Take care, everybody. Talk to you soon.
See you next time.
Thank you for watching Raiders of the Lost Podcast. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button as well, notifications for sure. Listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, everywhere you can listen to podcasts, and be sure to check out this other content we have on our YouTube channel. Raiders of the Lost Podcast is a mirror image production. Sound mixing done by Jacob Kossler. Opening music by Chase Jackson.